is itching, scratch it, click it, and then click the bell icon next to it to show it some love too, and choose all. That way you'll never miss an episode. So first up that I'm actually going to be sharing with you guys is Vampire Hunter D. Yo, what's up, baby Yoda? How's it going? Welcome to the broadcast. So we talked about Vampire Hunter D. This is one of my favorite anime movies ever. And the first time I saw it was on Sci-Fi. I don't know if you guys remember cable TV and watching, there's a Sci-Fi channel. But yeah, it's the first time I ever saw it. My dad actually, we were just hanging out on a Saturday, as a matter of fact. And it was like towards the afternoon time, and like Sci-Fi plays movies in the afternoon time. And then so my dad was just like, he put it on, and I started watching it. And, at first it was insane. The graphics and everything, it was pretty gory, and the drawings kind of freaked me out a little bit, but it was actually a really good story behind it. So the story of this is, it cuts in basically D, who is a vampire hunter and a very, very good one. Now, in the beginning of the movie that was released, I believe it was in '85, basically a young girl, her name is Doris Lang, and she takes care of her little brother, as her dad was a werewolf hunter, and he's deceased. So is her mother. So she's responsible for her little brother. She takes care of her little brother. Anyways, Doris ends up crossing into Count Magnus Lee's land, trying to protect her farm from mutants and all kinds of creatures that exist in that timeline. And by doing so, she's bitten by the Count. For doing so, she needs to hire a vampire hunter, as, of course, Count Magnus Lee, who ruled the land for so many years, is not going to give her up that easily. As a matter of fact, he's become infatuated with her and plans to marry her. So she looks for help trying to find a vampire hunter to do the job, and comes across D. Now, that's just what he's known as D, the hunter. But there's a secret to D that is later on revealed in the movie. But anyways, D accepts the job and begins basically looking after her and her brother, at the same time planning on how he's going to approach Magnus Lee. As Magnus Lee is 5,000 years old, or probably even older, makes him a very, very, very powerful vampire. So throughout the movie, basically, it's a lot of ups and downs, twists and turns. But the main thing is that D has to do what he can to protect Doris and to stop Magnus Lee. There are some notable characters like Regansi, who used to be a vampire hunter, but because of his infatuation of wanting to become a noble, as what the vampires are addressed as, he works for Magnus Lee and takes out other vampire hunters who would come to try and take out Magnus Lee himself. His daughter, what was her name again? Ramika. His daughter kind of shares her dad's, aggression towards the people of the land, but she has more of a heart. She just tends to hide it. It's not till later on in the end of the movies where, after it's revealed that Ramika is actually a Dampeel, so she's a half human, half vampire, is when she goes against her own father. But in the fight, towards the end, the secret that is revealed with this movie is that D actually is the son of Dracula. Most of the nobles who are vampires don't even know that Dracula's dying wish was that for all vampires to pretty much go back to the underworld, or go back, to the land, to the world of shadows. And D is actually tasked on doing that. But at the same time, it shows the struggle of a man who, is not accepted by humans, and is also not accepted by vampires because he hunts his own kind. Because he is the son of Dracula, he is the most powerful, even strong enough to take on a 5,000-year-old vampire such as Magnus Lee. Of course, he's never alone, because he was born with a virus in him, or an infection that, his hand has an actual face on it that talks to him, which comes pretty handy, because throughout the time that he does do battle and things like that, he actually can use that hand to kind of help out. The hand absorbs spirits, ghosts. It also can absorb, like small things such as spiders. I mean, there was one scene where he actually took on this one mutant creature that had spiders in its back that would come out. So literally, he would use that hand. That hand would actually be pretty helpful towards him. What's up, Blaze? What's going on? Welcome. But yeah, throughout the entire time, basically, it just shows the struggle of a Dan Peel, and just he's not accepted by humans. He's hated by vampires because he hunts them, and the movie was actually pretty good and like the animation of it was just insane for it being an 80s anime movie. I didn't even think it was that old until I got into my teens, and I bought a copy of the DVD, and when I did, it literally it showed me the date of when this thing was created. It was in the 80s. I was like, for the 80s, it's actually pretty good animation, pretty good drawing. The characters itself, there's some pretty unique ones inside there. That just insane, like the witch, when he reaches Magnus Lee's castle for the first time and he infiltrates it. There's a witch who's able to cast these shadow sentinels, is what she calls them. One of them was in the form of a cat. That's how Regancy finds out that D is actually a Dan Peel and not just a Dan Peel, but a very powerful one, is because when he's bitten by this shadow sentinel, a normal person or even a very weak Dan Peel would have lost their arm, but his arm stayed intact. I mean, it was bleeding, it was gushing blood, but it stayed intact. He was strong enough to resist. So the series itself, if you're interested in the movie, if you ever want to check it out, I would definitely recommend this as a movie to check out if you've never seen it, but I'm pretty sure it's pretty popular. There are several books on Google Play Books that you can buy and read. There are many other stories of these adventures, but this one happens to be the one, obviously, that they made a movie off of. And then they followed up with a sequel known as Vampire Hunter D Bloodlust. And this came out, I want to say early 2000s. So almost 15 to 20 years later, they came out with a sequel. It's not really a sequel because it's an entirely different story, but it still follows the story of D the Hunter. And in Bloodlust, it's a little bit of a different story because there's actually two vampires that seem to be antagonists. However, it kind of turns out that it's not. D is hired by a family that their daughter was stolen at night from, what the heck is his name? Oh, Meyer Link. Meyer Link, the vampire, took their daughter. And so in this one, in Bloodlust, you'll see a very difference with D from the first movie, and then in Bloodlust. In Bloodlust, D has taken enough shit from people that now he doesn't really have compassion for humans. He's just doing what his father bidded him to do. So if you watch both movies, in the first one, you'll see that D kind of has compassion for humans. He kind of tries to understand their feelings. He kind of opens up to Doris and shares a little bit of his feelings, showing his humanity. But in Bloodlust, he is cold as shit. He does not care for humans at this point, but that's just because of how many times that humans have hired him to track down vampires and to exterminate them. When he does the job, they tend to flip and turn on him and they run him out of their town. You'll see this in Bloodlust a little bit more later on when his cyborg horse is destroyed, trying to fight off Bengi, who's one of the Barbaroid. He walks into a town with his saddle, and in that town, when they find out that he's there, they pretty much surround him at gunpoint and they tell him to leave the town. His money's no good there, as he's just trying to buy another DL4 cyborg horse. The entire plot of Bloodlust basically takes a really huge turn at the end as you find out that the woman who was kidnapped actually is in love with Meyer Link, which kind of does eat at the core of D, because one of the things that he is upset about was the fact that his mother fell in love with his father, Dracula, and had him. And so seeing a repeat of that kind of irks the hell out of D. But at the same time, too, he kind of at the end finds his humanity again. Seeing what goes on, with various different characters, including the Marcus brothers, who are also hired to find a sister. They are a group of vampire hunters, and they're very good at it. Are kind of like competition to D. Whoever gets to her first gets the 1 million bounty. Towards the end of the movie, we discovered that the true antagonist is actually Carmela. And Carmela was actually killed by Dracula herself. Dracula had been annoyed with her bloodlust, and in her sleep, he had slain her, killing her. So, but her spirit lived on, and she haunted the castle, and she kind of manipulated everything, getting Meyer Link to take, his love with him and flee to her castle because they were going to use one of her ships to flee to the City of the Night, which happens to be, I guess, on another planet. This place is constantly dark. It is constantly, there's no sun. Therefore, vampires can live openly and freely, not like they can on Earth. Dee basically confronts Carmela, who realizes towards the end, and this is how it always goes. In any of the stories, if you read the books or you watch both anime movies, however, how it always goes is the antagonist vampire at the end always kind of figures out that Dee is the son of Dracula. And that's when they go on a one-on-one confrontation with him. He tries to take them out without using his abilities, right? Like his hand will tell you in one of the in the first movie, his hand will say it that, at the end you'll always show your fangs. And that's because Dee never really resorts to tapping into the powers that he was born with, much less even showing his fangs, or kind of like like embracing his vampiric side. He never really does that unless it's like a last resort, like when he was trapped in the catacombs in the first movie and he was wrapped up by the snake women of Midwich. They had him pretty much tight. They were constricting him, draining his life force. And after some time of just sitting in that situation, realizing the only way to get out was to actually like embrace his vampiric side, he then exposed his fangs and bit the snake women and drained them of their blood at the same time, weakening them, allowing his escape where then he can slaughter them. It happens again at the end of the movie when he fights Magnus Lee. He tries to take him on in like human form. That fight doesn't go very well, as Magnus Lee has the ability to control you with his mind, at which then Dee had no choice but to actually like open up his vampiric side and pretty much counter Magnus Lee's abilities, allowing him to kill him. And the same thing happens in Bloodlust, as Carmela continuously shocks the crap out of Dee, crippling him to his knees. At one point, he just gets so pissed off that his fangs get exposed. He taps into his vampiric side and he completely destroys her illusion that she casted over the room in the castle that they were in, exposing her spirit, allowing him to strike at her with his blade, and his hand being able to suck Carmela's spirit and devour it. From that, really is just, it's a really good tale. I mean, it has, some dramatic love, but it also just basically follows the struggle of this one man cursed to walk the world alone, not accepted by either side, but doing the wish of his father. So that was, I guess, as I continued, I watched both movies. It just really just grew on me. So I ended up reading some of the books that they had on Google Play. I think there's like 9 of them that you can find on Google Play and read. It's a very, very good story. And I think it's book 5. Book 5 kind of like coincides not with Bloodlust directly, but in the middle of the movie of Bloodlust, when he goes to that town that tries to run him out for buying a horse, the man that sells him the horse talks about a story of where these vampires came into their town and kidnapped all the children, and the town folk hired a vampire hunter to rescue the children, and the vampire hunter did. He killed all the vampires involved, and then he returned the children safely to their homes. And then the old man talked about how he felt bad because after the vampire hunter did his job, nobody stopped to thank him. Nobody cared. He called them ignorant bastards. He was like, they ran him out of town. And then he reveals that he was one of the children, which kind of shows, how old Dee really is and how slow the aging process is for a Dhampir. Dhampirs don't age, as quickly as humans do. And so the old man who was abducted when he was like 5 years old turns out to be 80 years old. And Dee looks exactly the same way he did when he met him that night when he was saved. So, in all, I would just definitely say that, this is just one of, like, actually, this is my top favorite anime movie. This is a movie that I can watch over and over again and just never get tired of. Like the animation, the effects, the drawings is just insane. And it kind of like, I don't know, for me, watching this movie kind of wraps me up into their world, almost as if like, I am in their world. It's just one of those things. And then the story itself is presented very, very well. So that's something that I would definitely tell anybody, if you're looking for, a good anime movie to check out, Vampire Hunter D, definitely one. And if you want to binge it, then follow up with Bloodlust. You can find them on YouTube, as a matter of fact. I'm not going to show how, because the person has the movie up on YouTube and YouTube hasn't taken it down. But I will say you can find it. And there are actually two different versions on YouTube. You can tell. The original one that I watched, that was on Sci-Fi, and the opening scene where it showed a giant full moon and the silhouette of a castle in the background. There is no narration on that one in the very beginning in English. There is an English version, and there's also a Japanese version with subtitles. But there's actually two different English versions. The dialogue in each one is like really different. But yeah, the one that showcased here in the US on Sci-Fi in the early 90s, and then you also have the DVD that came to the US. The opening scene, like I described, has no narration. Now, if you find one, this one it's in English also, but it's a bit different. The dialogue is completely changed, and the scene is the same way. So the very opening scene is a giant full moon with a castle silhouette in the background, but then you hear a guy narrate what's being shown on the screen, and he talks about, this takes place in the distant future where mutants and monsters roam the world. Like, it's like, and then of course the dialogue is a completely different. I don't know. You can watch either one and see which one resonates with you, but the one without the opening narration, the one that was originally sent to the US, that one's the one that I gravitate more towards, with the dialogue between all the characters. It just seems so differently done with the other one, the second version. That one just seems so weird. The dialogue between people is just weird, in my opinion. But definitely check it out. So that is my favorite anime movie of all time. Now I'm going to go to my favorite anime series of all time. And I've read all the books. I've had all the books, and stupid me, I don't have them anymore. And I had all the books. I had book 1 through book 13. 13 pretty much like broke down the entire story of Death Note from book 1 to 12. And it was it was insane, because book 13 had an envelope in the very middle of it. And in that envelope, you as the owner of the book, chose if you were going to tear open that envelope and get L's real name, or if you chose to keep it sealed and never know his name. But anyways, yeah, I'm talking about Death Note. Death Note's pretty touchy to me, because I'm still kind of annoyed with Netflix. Their version of Death Note, it was just like, that totally pissed me off. I just thought, it was no good. They changed the names of the characters and how things went. The only good thing from Death Note on Netflix was that the Shinigami Ryuk was correct as far as like how he looked. At least they didn't change that or do anything different to him. But Death Note pretty much is a very, it really challenges your mind to think, and then when you see the plots and how they unfold, kind of like throws you for a loop. But basically, it's like the world's grandest stage for a match of chess between Light Yagami and L. So, backstory to it and everything like that. L is the world's best detective. So good that he actually goes under 3 aliases, none of them linked together, so that way people wouldn't know. And then he would know who's trying to find him. He would, one that was used the most, L is his name that they use the most. But then it's like, say somebody wants to know the identity of L, they'll contact, the one of the top 3 best detectives in the world. And the other one is Oraldo Coyle, who also is L. So he knows who's trying to find him and everything. But anyways, so you have L, who was an orphan child, and pretty much lived in Whammy's house. Whammy was a famous inventor who made a fortune on his inventions and opened up a home for gifted children, those who were really insanely smart. And L is one of them. Whammy's house produces some of the best detectives in the world. And so L had always been by Whammy's side, who's also known as Watari. And they get word of unexplained killings in Japan, where L starts to investigate already without the Japanese force even knowing that he is. What's actually happening here is that a young man who is the son of the police chief, which is Soichiro Yagami, is the chief of the police. His son, Light Yagami, Light is going to high school and is studying and preparing because he wants to enter the police force with his dad. He's law-abiding a citizen, believes in the firm hand of the law. And on a very weird, awkward day, a Shinigami named Ryuk, who was bored in the Shinigami realm, dropped a death note into the human world. That notebook falls into the human world, and Light finds it. Now, Light just thinks it's some kind of prank or some kind of like novelty toy because, he picks up the notebook, he reads it, it says Death Note, reads the rules inside of it, and he thinks it's some sort of joke. So, he goes home, he has the Death Note with him, and he carries it with him. At home, he decides to, give it a try. He was watching the news. There was a criminal that was talked about on the news. He wrote the criminal's name and waited 10 seconds. Nothing happened. So he turned the TV off and went to bed. It wasn't until the next morning when he woke up, he discovered that the criminal whose name he wrote in his death note actually died. So Light kind of gets a little suspicious about the notebook, so he tries it out again. He does different experiments to try and figure it out, eventually coming to the conclusion that the death note is actually real. When you write someone's name in the death note while picturing their face, they will die. That is the thing. If you don't write how they die, they will die of simply a heart attack. But if you write someone's name in the death note while thinking of their face, and then in the next 6 minutes and 40 seconds, you write the details of how they die, it will happen that way. As Light pretty much uses that to his advantage later on in the series to kind of test things out, because once he finds out that the world's best detective L is coming after him and basically made a threat on him that when they catch him, they will execute him. It becomes a game between Kira versus L. Light going to use the name Kira to hide his identity, and obviously Kira is the pronunciation of the English word killer. And there were so many websites already being made of Kira that it was easy for Light to hide with that moniker. So he sticks with the moniker, he hides with it, and he executes criminals. That's his main thing. Those that are convicted criminals, those that there's a lot of evidence against them as criminals, he executes them. If you are accused of something, but you initially, weren't found, there's no evidence, you weren't found, you weren't convicted of it, then he wouldn't kill you. So throughout the series, L basically figures out where Kira's location is by doing a broadcast where he had a prisoner who was on death row, literally was given a deal, and the deal was that this guy had to read a script on live TV, and if nothing happened to him and he survived, they were going to grant him his freedom and let him go. However, if he was killed by Kira, obviously, then his execution was done. The criminal, agreed to it as a 50-50 chance that he would get his freedom back. And so what they did was they broadcasted that they were all over the world and that this guy was L, the detective. But actually what they did was they focused on Japan first because that's where most of the killings started. Without Light even knowing that, Light, out of brass and arrogance, watched the broadcast and got pissed off and wrote the guy's name. The guy said he was L, but his name was Lynn L. Taylor. And that's actually what the criminal's name really was Lynn L. Taylor. So this was all set up by L really good. So Light writes Lynn's name in the notebook, and then he dies. And then the screen flips to an Old English L on the screen, which is the symbol for L. And L reveals that they weren't broadcasting all over the world. They were only broadcasting in Japan. So that confirmed that Kira is in Japan. And Ryuk, who is the Shinigami that, is attached to the Death Note that Light has, he has no side in this. And he makes that very clear to not to L, but to Light, that he is not going to help Light find out who L is. He's going to sit back and watch this go down between them two. Now, L and Light they're pretty much geniuses. They come up with some of the most craziest things. And wow, news pops up. Senate approves 1.9 trillion stimulus. Okay, the Senate approved it. Anyways, so L, being who he is, he's a very odd character. I mean, he's super smart and intelligent. That is hands down. He has a fascination with eating sweets only, so like candies, sugar cubes, and things like that. And he drinks massive amount of coffee. But the thing about L is that he likes to play with his food. So like maybe he gets like some chocolate cubes, and before he eats the chocolate cubes, he would try to construct some sort of shape with it, like a building block, like Legos. Try to build something with it before eating it. You'll see that throughout the entire series if you watch the anime series, or if you buy the books and you read them, you'll see that. That's something about him. And he likes to antagonize people to get under their skin and touch their nerves. But he does it for a reason, because he's hoping that they will slip, or he'll find something that would give him a reason to believe otherwise. There's a massive amount of characters in this movie, but the main ones basically is Light Yagami, who is the antagonist, L, who is the protagonist. Then you got the Kira Task Force team, which comprises of Deputy Director Yagami, who was the chief before, but he becomes deputy director later. You have Matsuda, you have Mochi, and Aizawa. You have them on a task force, and then you have Misa Amane, who is a model / music artist, who basically worships Kira. Who ends up being Light's girlfriend. So you have her. And beyond anything else, you also have L's successors, which is Mello and Nier. But I'll get into them a little bit later. As like I said, there's a lot to this story. There's a lot of characters in the story, but the main ones are the ones I just named. Those are the ones that you will see throughout most of it, except for L. We'll get into a little bit of that. So it's always a back and forth. It's a game of chance and a game of chess between Light and L. Now, another Death Note does fall into the human world, and it is actually given to Misa Amane. Misa Amane, being a very popular model and singer, she worships Kira because when she was in high school, she came home and found her entire family slain, like they were killed by this insane, crazy person. And she saw the killer's face, and he got away. When they arrested the killer and they went to court, Misa testified to what she saw, but to the Japanese courts, it wasn't enough to convict the guy, so her murderer got away free, or her family's murderer. It wasn't until like a year later, she was thinking about her family, and a young boy ran up to her and showed her a newspaper article. And when she read the newspaper article, it actually showed her that Kira killed the guy who killed her family. And because he did, she was in an instant, like, she became a fangirl right then and there and supported everything that Kira done, because he had killed the man who killed her mom and dad and her siblings. So there's another Shinigami in the Shinigami realm who actually was infatuated with Misa. So much that he broke the number one cardinal rule of Shinigamis, which is a Shinigami is not allowed to take a life to extend another human's life. Shinigami's purpose is only to take the lives of humans, but never to extend the life of a human. And at a time in life that Misa was supposed to die, another Shinigami who was infatuated with her, his name was Jealous, ended up writing the killer's name in his death note, killing him and extending Misa's life. But by doing so, he sacrificed his own life. But before he died, he made another Shinigami named Rem promise him that she would give his death note to Misa. And in fact, Rem did. So Misa ends up becoming the second Kira, which is why this starts to take a twist and turn, because while L is investigating, trying to, because he's already deduced everything down and suspects that Light is Kira at this point of the story, about 91% sure that Light is Kira. But the way L operates is that he does not make a final move until he's 100% sure. So even though he's 91% sure that Light is Kira, which in fact we know he is, he won't go in for an arrest. He won't settle for 91%. It's got to be 100% or nothing. So when Misa becomes the second Kira, it really throws the investigation off, and L just kind of like, okay, what's going on? Because at this point, L knows nothing. He doesn't know nothing of Shinigamis. He doesn't know nothing of magical notebooks that can kill people. All he's thinking is that there's some sort of conspiracy that's allowing Kira to kill these people without actually physically being there, and he wants to know what it is. So throughout this time, Misa is the second Kira, and she actually makes a deal with Rem. That deal is to get the eyes of the Shinigami. So while Light doesn't have this, because he was already told about this offer from Ryuk, who's attached to his Death Note, when he learns that the price of obtaining the eyes of the Shinigami is half your lifespan, he chooses not to accept the deal. What this is, the eyes of the Shinigami, is when you are a Shinigami and you look at somebody, you can see their real name and how long they're supposed to live. It's like a little, thing floating over their head that pretty much tells you, like, only you can see if you have Shinigami eyes. And so Misa makes the deal for the Shinigami eyes. But the reason that she's doing it is because she wants to meet the real Kira. And if she could be of use to him, she would help him in his plan to rid the world of evil people. So she does become the second Kira. Trust me, there are more people that become Kira in this story. It gets really wacky and crazy. But throughout the early half of Death Note, it's really pretty much Kira versus L. And L gets really damn close to figuring out that Light is Kira. But because of a fake rule that was written in the Death Note to throw them off, as one of Light's brilliant plans was that he would surrender himself to the Kira task force, since they had already abducted Misa, because they had figured out that Misa was a second Kira. They arrested her and detained her and hid her from everybody. And Light knew this because L had basically told Light to stay away from Kira task force. Because Soichiro, who is Light's dad, asked his son to help on the case and to work alongside L. So when they arrested Misa, Light did not. He came up with a plan to save Misa's life, because if he didn't, the Shinigami who was attached to Misa, Rem, was going to kill Light. So Light came up with a very unorthodox and very tricky plan, but basically swapping Death Notes around, where Ryuk would be attached to the Death Note that belongs to Misa, and the Death Note that belongs to Light would be attached to Rem. The plan was for Rem to find somebody to take over as the duties of Kira, while Light surrendered himself to the Kira task force. Now, one of the things that it tells you about the Death Note is that if you have the Death Note and you're in possession of one, when you relinquish possession of it or you give up ownership of it, what happens is that the Shinigami that's attached to you in the book erases all your memories of the Death Note itself. So everything you've done with the Death Note, the fact that Death Notes are real and the fact that Shinigamis are real, all gets wiped from your mind. Everything else about your life and the things that you did in those days, those memories will be there. And Light knew this because by giving up ownership of the Death Note, completely absolves him from any like actual knowledge of him using the Death Note and what he was using it for. So while locked up in the Kira task force, he seemed like a very innocent person, only because he really is. He no longer has memories of the Death Note, Ryuk, or anything that he's done. And so when he tries to convince L that he is not Kira, it really sounds genuine. So in that time that Rem had Light's Death Note, she gives it to a guy who runs a corporation called Yotsuba. And in there, what's his name? This is Kyoichi. Kyoichi, who, was one of the top board members in Yotsuba, ends up getting possession of the Death Note, and he follows Rem's instructions, which is to continue killing criminals, but he can also use the Death Note to his advantage too. And Light planned this from the very beginning because this is how they were going to catch the person who became Kira next. Because they're going to leave breadcrumbs that'll lead them to him. So after convincing L and the Kira task force that Light is not Kira, L comes up with the plan that Light and L have to work together so much that they would be handcuffed together, so Light couldn't go anywhere without L. At the same time, they were going to pursue this new Kira, and they do. They set up some really tricky plans to catch this guy. They end up catching him. But see, one of the things that Ryuk told Light was when you get possession of the Death Note that you have possessed before, you would have to kill the owner, the new owner of the Death Note, to permanently restore your memory. So once you touch the Death Note, all your memories will come back of what you did with it. But to keep your memories, you would have to kill the new owner of the Death Note and assume possession of the Death Note again, which Light does. It was like really crazy in how he does this. And by doing so, he gets possession of the Death Note and all his memories come back. And so, yeah, L is like confused, like what is going on. Of course, the discovery of Shinigami is real as every member of the Kira task force touched the Death Note. So now they can see Rem, who's attached to it. And at this point, this is where Light goes in for the kill. And he does successfully kill L. Actually, he doesn't kill L. He forces Rem to do it by, telling Misa that she was also Kira, and then telling her where the other Death Note was buried. Misa gets her powers back when she assumes ownership of that Death Note. But this time, Ryuk is attached to her, and Rem is attached to Light. So while Misa does it, she was supposed to remember the name she saw over L's head so she could write it in the Death Note, but she couldn't remember it. So she made the deal again, halving her lifespan again in half just to try to get the name of L. By doing this, Rem's seen this, and Rem's seen all possibilities that would have ended to Misa dying sooner than what her life expectancy was before. And by this, Rem is forced to kill L and Watari. And then by doing so, Light wins the battle between him and L. And when Light wins, he goes on a killing spree, killing everybody that worked with L. Like L had he had like a world-class thief, a world-class con artist working with him. And so L ended up killing them. He ended up killing all the members of the Yotsuba. He killed everyone that was involved with the first case, thinking that, okay, this would put it all behind, and then he would be the god of the new world. But what Light didn't know was that at Whammy's house, there were two young boys that were successors to take up the mantle of L once they were grown up or L had passed away. And the director of Whammy's house gets the news that both Watari and the real L had passed. Light joins the police force and assumes the identity of L to try to control the world's police force, as the world's police force trusts L. So he assumes the name L, goes on that, and continues to hunt Kira, even though he is Kira. He just can't just say, okay, we're not going to hunt Kira anymore, because that would then make him really suspicious, and the Kira task force, head by his father, would eventually catch him and execute him as planned. So they're still hunting Kira, even though he is Kira. And he thinks that this is just going to be like a joke. Like, okay, we're going to joke around. Until he meets Nier, who codename is N. Nier his mannerisms are very, very much close to what L is, except Nier is a bit more colder. While L is willing to challenge Kira directly to try and draw clues from it, Nier has no compassion for anybody. He will do any tactic he wants to do to draw Kira out. Of course, that's like L times 2. But the thing about these two guys, so there's Nier and there's Mello. Mello was 15 at the time of L's death, and Nier was 12, I believe. Nier went back to the U.S., where he's originally from, so he's actually American. I think Mello is French. But Nier goes to the president of the United States and acquires the help of several FBI agents and CIA agents to create the SPK, the Special Provision for Kira. And they would work separately away from the Kira task force, because Nier already, after examining everything that L had left as his findings and his last memoirs of what he was doing on the case, Nier was able to also deduce that Light Yagami had to be Kira. So that's why he didn't want to work with the Kira task force, and he created his own task force to hunt Kira. It continues on and back and forth, and Light starts to slip. First of all, Mello links up with a mob crew. The mafia crew was able to actually kidnap Light's sister, force them to give up one of the death notes so that way Mello can get his hands on it. And it's literally like a race to see who catches Kira first, because Mello and Nier are like they're always competing against each other, because one of them would take the mantle L. And Mello, his characteristics is that he's also just about as smart as Nier is. But the problem with Mello is that Mello thinks more with his emotions rather than his intellectual side. And so that's always why Nier tends to get the one up over Mello when they're competing from anything from problem solving, puzzles, and things like that, is because Nier does not think with his emotions at all. If you really kind of think about it, because L does have emotions, if we do see this throughout the first half of Death Note, it's like taking L and splitting him into two different people. Nier being the more intellectual and logical thinker, Mello the intellectual, emotional thinker. Combine them two together, and you have L, who is a logical thinker and hides his emotions, but his emotions spawns through in the time where it needs to. So anyways, through this one, we get several other people playing Kira. One of them is a banker who worships... no, he's a lawyer. He's a lawyer who also worships Kira's ruling. His name is Teru Mikami. And he is given the Death Note as well, but... I don't know.
This is Fletching is appearing more in the wild. If you're lucky, you may encounter Shiny.
Who?
Fletching?
Oh yeah, today's Community Day then. Start playing. You can catch a shiny Fletching. Got an update today. It's actually Community Day, I believe. But before I start playing here. But anyways, Light also meets an ex-girlfriend from high school. Takeda is her last name, and she works for the news company. She works for the news company that likes to report on Kira. So anyways, Light is actually in love with her. He doesn't really love Misa. He just uses her because she has the Shinigami eyes. In this point of all of it, he's actually living with Misa. They're together, but he's having secret meetings at a hotel with Takeda. And it's actually because when she found out that he is Kira, she supports Kira too. So he kind of like uses her to communicate with Mikami. So that way the Kira Task Force and the SPK doesn't see a link between Light and Mikami. So throughout all this second half, and with Mello's help, even though they were always in competition, before Mello dies, Mello gave a very big clue to Nier that helped Nier crack the case. And so in the final standoff, Nier basically knows that Mikami is going to go to this empty warehouse where the SPK and the Kira Task Force are going to meet face to face. And he explains to everybody in the crowd that somebody is going to crack the door just a little bit, enough to see inside there, and not to panic, not to freak out. What's up, bro? Not to freak out, not to do anything, because they would be okay. A lot of the guys were like nervous because they're like, if this guy is supposed to be the other Kira, he's gonna kill us. And Nier continuously tries to calm Matsuda down and tell him that no, this is not gonna happen. Like, relax, trust me. And the reason for that is throughout the time where Mikami writes all their names down, and then Nier confirms Mikami's outside, and then asks if he wrote all their names down, and he says yes. It's basically to prove that Light is Kira. It shows that Light is Kira because, first of all, the names written down to die was everybody that was in that room. So we're talking about Aizawa, we're talking about Mochi, we're talking about Matsuda, we're talking about Nier, we're talking about the FBI and the CIA agents with Nier. All their names was written down, but one name was not written down, and that was Light's name. The reason why none of the agents died, even though their names was written in the Death Note, was that one of Nier's CIA agents who's working with him in the SPK, Giovanni, was able to steal both Death Notes. So they had a copy one, but they were going to replace the Death Note with a fake Death Note. However, they knew that Mikami would be able to know if it was a real or fake, because Mikami does something to test the Death Note to make sure it is the one and that it's not a fake one, that the real one's been stolen. So what they actually did was they calculated by how many people that Mikami kills a day and how many pages it would take, to get to the day they were meeting. They calculated what page he would be on in the real Death Note, and they actually swapped out from that day on forward with fake pages. And then they put the real pages that they took from the real Death Note in the fake Death Note. That way, if Teru Mikami wanted to test it and he happened to have the fake one in his hands, it would actually work because it would have real pages from the real Death Note. And they had Giovanni stay up all night and copy identically all the names of people that Mikami wrote in the Death Note, precisely how he wrote it with the same penmanship, to literally make it look identical. And by this, Mikami actually had the real Death Note. He was just on a fake page. But by then, the CIA had already arrested Mikami at the door when he was panicking on why none of them were dying. And that's where Nier reveals his plan, but also proves that Light Yagami is in fact Kira. So a very, very unique story when it comes to Death Note. And I just pretty much explained a lot of the synopsis, but trust me, I didn't ruin a lot for everybody because this thing is so massively huge. You have to read the books and you have to watch the series to really see how this plays out. What I just gave, which was probably a really long synopsis of it, it spoiled some things, yes, but trust me, there's a lot in there to go on that you just have to see for yourself. And so, yeah, I mean, that is my top favorite anime series is Death Note. My favorite anime movie is Vampire Hunter D. Of course, I've watched other ones that are, really good too. Some honorable mentions, obviously, Ninja Scroll. I thought that one was actually pretty good, pretty gory, yeah, for a kid. What was it? I watched Ninja Scroll when I was 11 or 12, around that age or whatever. But yeah, yeah, there's some sexual explicit content in that anime. So just kind of warn people, if you're going to watch Ninja Scroll, don't watch it with kids around. I didn't even know this, and my dad didn't even know this. And yeah, let's just say that I got told to look away when my dad realized what I was watching. This is when I lived in Hawaii. But yeah, I was told to look away from it. But anyways, Ninja Scrolls 1, Fist of the North Star, Ghost of the Shell. There are some there's some good ones out there, but the ones that I would definitely always want to watch, want to see for movies is Vampire Hunter D, and for anime series it's Death Note. Now one of my favorite things to actually do is play Dead by Daylight. I'm sure you guys have seen me do some live streaming from Dead by Daylight. It is just one of my favorite games on Google Stadia. I'm not very good at it, so don't even expect a whole lot. But I mean, Dead by Daylight, it's a really fun game if you've never played it. It's a really really fun game. You watched that as a kid? Which one? Ninja Scroll? Same with Vampire Hunter D. Did you watch Bloodlust also, the second one? My brother's on here. Anyways, Dead by Daylight just has to be one. I mean, I totally suck at this game. Trust me, I do. I got to play more to really kind of get a handle of it. But it's actually a really fun game to play, and I like playing as the killer. Some people are just like, why don't you try being a survivor? And I don't know, being a survivor and trying to find the generators and trying to, rewire the generators so they turn on, so it opens up both exit doors to get out of the area. It doesn't seem fun for me. But when I play as the killer and I have to hunt, find, and kill people, that just seems to be more fun for me. So, yeah, the Huntress is probably the one that I like to use the most currently right now. I mean, she does have good speed. She's not really fast. She has good speed, though. Better than all the other ones that I have currently. So the ones that I have is the Trapper, the Huntress, the Nurse, the Wraith. And then I have Pyramid Head. I actually bought that one. I do want to save up to buy both Ghostface from Scream and Michael Myers. Of course, they don't have them named as that. They give them different names, so no copyright. But I want to unlock those. At least Ghostface only because he's fast. I've seen gameplay of him for people using him in Dead by Daylight, and he's really fast. And that's what I want to do is be able to chase down these people and get them. Because the one thing that absolutely irritates me about Dead by Daylight is when you hack at somebody, to give the survivor a fighting chance to get away, it's a very slow animation for the killer to wipe the blood off whatever weapon they had just attacked a survivor with. And it really irritates me because, like, I get it. You're trying to make it fair for the survivors to, get a chance to flee and run away. But maybe just speed that animation up just like a good, like a good 1.5 seconds. You know what I mean? Because they hack, you hear the cut, and then they like slowly and it's like, okay, you're a killer. Why do you need to wipe the blood off? Like, just, hack at them. Give them get a survivor 1.5 seconds to get away and then be able to go after him again. You know what I mean? Wiping that blood off just takes too much time. And so it gets a bit annoying, but the Huntress is actually a good responder to that. Her and Pyramid Head, I'm starting to get used to using. With the Huntress, she has the hatchets that she can throw, so she can get you from long distance, at least, a good maybe 10 feet from her. She can hit you with that'll cause damage. And then she can walk up on you and then hack you with her big axe, and that'll count as 2 strikes. That'll put you down. With Pyramid Head, he has that giant knife blade that he carries, but his unique technique, you have to be within 5 to 6 feet from Pyramid Head for this attack to actually hit you. His special technique. I think it's called like Right to Judgment or something like that. But anyways, like, yeah, he slams the knife into the ground. It's kind of like a charge attack. And then he lifts the blade, and like the darkness from Silent Hill is what actually hits you. And the cool thing about it is that even if a survivor is hiding behind like, a wall or a box or a plank or something like that, this attack will go through it and hit them, and it'll count as a strike. So, in general, I mean, the graphics of the game is kind of scary. I've done some live streams, and some of my friends on here have actually said, like, it's kind of creepy. And like, yeah, it's made to be. My tactic that I use, which is probably like a very noob tactic, is to find one of the survivors, strike them twice to put them down, and then I leave them there as bait. I leave them there as bait while they're sitting there, and I try to get them in the center. I don't ever try to get them where they're close to where one of the exits are. Because if they are close to where one of the exits are, you have them put down, and the other survivors activate all generators and start opening the doors. Even though that person's down on their stomach, they can crawl, and they can crawl their way out. And if you pick them up and they're able to shake off your shoulders, they actually recover back at least one half of their life, which allows them to kind of limp away, and they'll escape. So my strategy is putting them down in the middle of the arena area, and then baiting them, waiting for somebody from one of the other survivors to come and try to rescue them. Because they try to, but when they get both exit doors open, I've noticed from game players and our survivors, they don't just fend for themselves. They don't just go and like run out and like leave the other person down. They try to rescue the other person. And one time that kind of went for like a 2-for-1 special, because I put one survivor down, another survivor came and they got caught slipping, and I cut them and they went down. So now I had 2 bodies down. The timer was running out. You heard the little alarm kind of beeping and beeping and beeping. And then by the time the timer ran out, like I thought, because I didn't put them on the hook, that it wouldn't count as a kill. But through the ground, those same little shadow spines that appeared by the hooks appeared out from the ground and grabbed the survivors and like killed them. So I ended up getting 2 kills on that. I really wish though, because like I'm old school, so like I know like a lot of the young gamers, and they're comfortable using the joystick on a gamepad. I find more accuracy using the 4-directional D-pad, and I really wish that there was a way, at least on Stadia. I don't know how it is on other game consoles, but at least on Stadia, I hoped that it would have at least allowed you in settings to switch it up and use the 4-directional D-pad. I mean, yeah, you can still use the right joystick to kind of look around. like as your viewpoint to switch up your viewpoint, like that I'd have been okay with. But like movement, no, because maneuvering around these walls and stuff like that is bad enough as is. I know there's other people like Axe Gamer Girl 9 who plays and they can maneuver around this game really, really easily. And that's cool. But I mean, I'm old, so D-pad seems to kind of work out for me. So that's the only thing is that I just wish that they would allow that. Anyways, here we're coming up in the 1 hour mark. Also, I just recently started my 7-day trial on the Nintendo Switch. Downloaded the NES and the Super NES, which allows it's not an emulator, but it allows you to play like Super Nintendo games and Nintendo games. And downloaded both of them. I started playing Super Mario World, kind of like a throwback to when my dad first bought a Super Nintendo in Guam. And he, my sister, and myself stayed up one day playing it because my dad was working for both. He was working as a hydraulics maintenance at the airport in Guam, and then he was also working as a Domino's delivery driver. And I don't even know if I think my dad knows this. But me and my sister used to prank call orders to Domino's because like my dad, he would always like tell his boss like if there was like pizzas that were just gonna get thrown away, he would gladly take them. And they never took it out of my dad's check. We confirmed that. So when my dad was like, yeah, someone pranked an order and the boss just gave it to me so it wouldn't go to waste. Me and my sister started prank calling in orders to my dad, to the Domino's that my dad worked at so we can get like pizzas that we wanted. We would never go overboard and try to get like 20 pizzas. We weren't stupid like that. We would go and we would like call in Domino's and order like a meat lovers or, Supreme or pineapple Canadian bacon, that type of thing. And like, my dad would come home with them. And so, when my dad bought a Super Nintendo, because he went to go see my Uncle Ray in Puerto Rico, my Uncle Ray had one, my dad played there. So my dad was like, me and my older sister Sonia will probably enjoy it. So he bought one and a Super Mario World. And we stayed up that day playing it, but we were playing and we were taking turns on each level or whatever. And then my dad and my sister got tired, but I continued playing and ended up beating the game. And I think it annoyed my dad and my sisters, so they didn't want to play anymore. But I mean, it was a lot of fun. It was good times. It was a very good time. So I have that on the Switch. Trying it out, 7-day trial. Not bad. The pricing for Nintendo Online, because it's like for Family Pass, it's like $39 or $29. No, $39, $39.99, $40 basically. But for like a single account pass, it is $12.99 a year. So that's actually not bad. I may just opt for the family pass so that way, because my son has a Switch account and my lady has a Switch account, so it'd be cool for like all of us to be able to access Nintendo Online. And then that way, you can play Streets of Rage 4. Like I tried playing Streets of Rage 4 last night online, but there wasn't anyone that had one set up to play throughout all the stories. They were just doing battle modes, which is kind of like annoying. Like, okay, dude, like you want to fight on Streets of Rage against other people playing characters, let's just play Street Fighter. Anyways, just just some cool stuff about to do with gaming. But anyways, that's pretty much it for today's live. Just kick back and Anime Saturday. So for those that watch live, thank you so much for coming in and watching live. I know there's like people jumping in and out. That's cool or whatever. If you catch a replay, #NerdUp. So I know you guys watched it and you guys will level up. And that's pretty much it. I will see you guys probably later tonight for some gameplay, or maybe tomorrow. I don't know, but I'll definitely let you guys know on Twitter before I go and do it. So until then, take it easy. Peace.